Hello, everybody. It's Phil Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. Today is Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021, and today's episode is uh, dissecting an anti-Lee diatribe. Before I get started in my presentation, click on the notification bell in the upper right if you want to get notified of future episodes and increase the subscription count here. I'm going to go over to my notes now and begin my presentation. Let me just pull those up. Okay. Washington and Lee journalism professor Toni Locy closes her Robert E. Lee polemic that was published in The Nation last June by quoting Black writer James Baldwin. Quote, "Time reveals the foundations on which any kingdom rests and destroys doctrines by proving them to be untrue. Thus, she wrongly implies that only contemporary writers such as Elizabeth Pryor and John McClure tell the truth about Lee after having allegedly discovered facts that escaped earlier authors. In truth, the purported facts are mostly dubious accusations. Locy, for example, writes that Pryor's 2007 Reading the Man book, quote, revealed that many Washington College students were Confederate veterans that revered the general, close quote. That's an obvious point. It was noted by many earlier authors, including, just for the record, Clifford Dowdey in his 1965 Lee biography. Moreover, Locy even misrepresents Lee critics such as Pryor when it suits her. For example, she claims that Lee got the Washington College presidency by reason of one daughter's complaint at a Richmond social gathering shortly after Appomattox that her father needed work. But the daughter's exact words suggest a different meaning. Quote, the people of the South are offering my father everything but work, and work is the only thing he will accept at their hands, close quote. In short, Lee was declining unearned charity, which is contrary to Locy's argument that Lee, quote, acted dishonorably throughout his life, close quote. Finally, she fails to note that even Pryor concluded that the college was lucky to get Lee. Quote, when Lee arrived, Pryor wrote, the school had been ransacked by Union armies and was reduced to 40 students. The faculty had not been paid in years and the school was perilously in debt, close quote. Earlier, Locy writes, Lee's image as a proponent of reconciliation between the North and South is a prime example of revisionist history. I'm just quoting her there. Yet even the critical Pryor concedes, quote, Lee's courageous military restraint in 1865 and his early words of reconciliation were more than a face-saving bow from the stage. They offered a running start toward reconciliation. Near the end, Locy's article cites incidents and accusations involving the Lexington, Virginia Freedmen's Bureau and, scare quotes, General Lee's boys, close scare quotes. She relies upon sources that don't explain the Bureau's full role. She appears to be unaware of the Bureau's agenda to program freedmen into becoming Republican allies, thereby bifurcating instruction into two components. One, basic education. Two, indoctrination. Ironically, 152 years before the Nation published Locy's article, that venerable magazine smugly predicted that the Bureau schools would transform Black students into Republicans. Southerners objected to the political propaganda, not the basic education. During a February 1866 congressional interrogation, Lee replied that Southerners thought schooling Blacks, quote, would be better for Blacks and better for whites. In working contract negotiations, it would be better that the Blacks were educated. That's what he's saying. I mean, it's true. I mean, only common sense could say that it wasn't. When the first Freedmen's Bureau agent arrived in Lexington in the autumn of 1865, congressional radical Republicans were focused on the Bureau's potential to promote freedmen allegiance to the party. In February 1866, radical Congressman Thaddeus Stevens introduced a bill that would confiscate Southern farms with aggregate acreage the size of the state of California. He planned to redistribute the land to freedmen and Republican carpetbaggers and scalawags. Prior to that, Stevens had engineered wartime confiscation acts since 1861, which is what, 5 years? 5 years of that. After the 1867 Reconstruction Acts gave blacks the right to vote for delegates to Southern state constitutional conventions, many Bureau agents became leaders of the Union League chapters that Republicans used to herd freedmen into the Republican Party. They also advocated, those heads of the Union Leagues, that former Confederates be denied voting and office holding privileges, as had already happened in Virginia's neighboring states of Maryland and Tennessee. Some Maryland citizens fought with the South during the Civil War, and when they went back to Maryland, they couldn't vote. Tennessee had restricted ex-Confederate vote severely by strict loyalty oaths. Their purpose of these Union Leagues was, the Union League purpose was to establish Republican-controlled puppet regimes throughout the South, thereby keeping the Republican Party in control in Washington. That was what it was all about. Locy also fails to mention that the Bureau had dictatorial powers in disputes between blacks and whites over the laws and court rulings across the South. It arbitrarily approved or disapproved employment contracts between the races. Don't believe me? Even black historian W.E.B. Du Bois wrote that the Bureau, quote, maintained and used military force and dictated such measures as it thought necessary, close quote. He also admitted, quote, the character of its personnel prejudiced the Bureau in favor of black litigants, which led without doubt to much injustice and annoyance, close quote. Consequently, Lexington area whites were more uneasy about the Bureau's true intentions concerning ex-Confederate farm confiscations and voting rights than they were about racial differences per se. She relies mostly upon McClure's Freedmen's Bureau and General, scare quotes, General Lee's boys, close scare quotes, essay for her accusations of white sexual abuse of black women, and 3 documented incidents of racial confrontation in Lexington while Lee was college president. McClure adds little to Douglas Southall Freeman's analysis of the 3 known incidents in his Lee biography published 85 years ago and written even earlier than that. In the first incident, the Bureau informed Lee that 3 students harassed a former agent while he was ice skating. Lee summoned the students and they left the school upon exiting his office. In the second incident, 5 students spied upon a political meeting at the Freedmen's Bureau school, prompted by a federal act that put Virginia under martial law. After 1 student hit a security guard, 4 of the boys were arrested, although they had done nothing but watch. After legal authorities notified Lee, he called the 4 into his office. Due to his honor pledge at Lee's school, the 5th student joined them, confessed his guilt, and was expelled. In the third incident, an adult black male shot a white adolescent. After a white mob hunted the shooter down, 1 student deterred a lynching by imploring the crowd to avoid staining the school's reputation and invoking Lee's prestige to encourage that, and to encourage that avoidance. McClure's sexual abuse allegations are based largely upon communications within the Freedmen's Bureau and affiliated organizations. Some of the supposed victims admitted they were merely cohabitating with white men. As for the others, the Bureau evidently never arrested or tried anyone, notwithstanding its supreme powers, as explained by Black historian W.E.B. Du Bois. Most significantly, however, the tension between the Bureau and the Lexington whites could be relieved by diffusing the voting rights and land confiscation issues. Ultimately, Congress turned away from confiscation, and leading white Virginians identified the proposed 1869 state constitution as a way to settle the voting rights issue. In a concord with President Ulysses Grant, the group agreed to support the Constitution that would give Black males full suffrage in Virginia, so long as voters were also allowed to ballot separately on the Confederate disfranchisement provisions. As a result, they overwhelmingly approved the Constitution, while the restriction on Confederate voting rights was defeated by a smaller but decisive margin. Lee was among the white Virginia leaders who advocated the arrangement. The May 3rd, 1869 New York Tribune even reported that Lee made the plea in a private White House meeting with President Grant 2 days earlier. Locy writes that it, quote, defies logic, close quote, to give Lee any credit for contributing to W&L's superior academic status, arguing that it instead belongs to, quote, the thousands of students, faculty, and staff who came after him, including the brave men and women of color, close quote. The school began racial integration in 1966 and became co-ed in 1985. While Black and female graduates have contributed to its reputation since those milestones, the institution already had a prestigious reputation before they arrived. Nearly 60 years ago, Black activist Ralph Ellison was an invited speaker at Lee Chapel, whereas the school has not permitted outside speakers to provide a full-throated defense of Lee in recent years. The allowable advocates provide only diluted defenses, which avoid the consequences of America's present cancel culture. While diversity of skin color, gender, and ethnicity is a worthy value for an academic institution, or most any institution, I suppose. I can't think of one that wouldn't. Anyway, while diversity of skin color, gender, and ethnicity is a worthy value for an academic institution, Locy should let go of her apparent conviction that it supersedes diversity of thought. It is the latter diversity that fosters debate, and debate can reveal the truth. Okay, let me just get my picture back. What's going on at Washington Lee is important for those of you that want to protect Confederate monuments and Confederate memory. It is important. You need to get the facts. I'm trying to give you everything I can, but there are a couple of books I want to recommend. Ulysses Grant's Failed Presidency. It's available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble for $20. If you want a personal autographed copy, get it from me. Email me, Phil, P-H-I-L _Lee, L-E-I-G-H @me.com. I will send it to you. I'll cover the postage to get it to you if you're here in the United States. The other book that's going to help you understand a lot of what's going on here, Causes of the Civil War, just published last year. $22 at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Autographed copies from me for $25. Again, Phil, P-H-I-L _Lee, L-E-I-G-H @me.com. Okay, that's our show, and thanks for watching.